Well, hello, folks. I'm Melly Little, and this is your daily TA wrap. We take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about the coming days. I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, here from the base of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. Folks, it was a sideways day for the most part. Markets really just couldn't get going. We had pressure from the NDX pretty much all day. We saw Oracle after the bell take a pretty good hit, about 8% on earnings. Now that's the first one that's actually gone the wrong way being not bullish, of the pre-earnings or the early earnings that are coming out. Remember, we had Intel, Adobe, FedEx, all of those indicating good earnings season. Oracle wasn't horrible, but it certainly wasn't enough to justify higher prices, and they sold it off after hours. So that will be some pressure tomorrow on the index again. But for the most part, these markets held in here. I mean, if we look at it and take a look at the ending quotes here, you had the Dow basically flat. Matter of fact, they were all basically fat in terms of flat, not fat, but flat in terms of the indexes. No real movement, a little bit of a mixed market. As you see, the index was the pressure. And then you go over and you look at gold. My goodness, gold, $46 higher today, 3.61%. Last night, I had indicated that, late in the show, I'd indicated that gold looked like it was about to flip around and head higher. I took a few minutes to show you the GDX, the silver, and the reason gold should move up. And boy, did it move up. Big time move there. Hopefully you got in on some of that. The oil was up again. Oil's testing the highs. So, when I say from a neoclassical perspective, I'm doing multiple things. I mean, certainly I'm looking at the market from the perspective of supply and demand on the chart, and I'm also looking for trend. But when you look at a chart like gold, and let's bring the gold chart up and review this once more. I mean, how can you make that kind of a call? And I'm not trying to laud myself, and pat myself on the back as much as to say it looked pretty obvious that this was going to try to do that. And I made the case for it last night because, as a late observation yesterday, it became obvious to me that it was going to. Why is that? Well, you tested into what should be a retest regenerate. This has been down for a while. If we look at it here on the weekly, you can see what I'm talking about. This thing has been down for a while. It came down, it tested into this high. Volume there, 41.2. You came into it with 39.9, so you didn't have quite as much. You got under it, back over it, a little higher volume, right? Now you're coming back up to do a retest, regen into this low on the weekly. That high happens to be 127.38, and now it looks like it is going to go test that before it's done. It's not that far away from it after today's outburst. But the setup on the daily, on the weekly, and in particular on the gold stocks was suggesting this was going to happen because the gold stocks had already started to run. We saw the breakout yesterday, ABCD structure on the upside, big volume today. Finishes off ABCD structures all over the place in not only the sector but a bunch of the stocks themselves. And you can just go right across the list here. Gold, GG, Gold Corp, so Rand Gold, Gold Corp, Royal Gold, all of these big spikes finishing off ABCD structures and actually more than finishing them off. And gold does that, and that's why I constantly monitor it, because it can give you some good returns if you catch it. So Let's move to the markets, but I had to bring that up as evidence of the whole idea of looking across sectors, right? You got to correlate it all, as well as look at it from the neoclassical. So it's really not just looking at something in isolation. It's really trying to look at the whole picture, and I'm sure to some extent you've gotten a feel for that with me discussing this on a nightly basis with you, and hopefully that has come through loud and clear. Let's go to the markets and take a look at them. So, they basically hung today, and so we kind of went sideways. S&P has a large ABCD structure to the upside. That S&P actually today finished off the monthly target. That monthly target was 1959, I think 54 if I remember right. Gets up to 87, gets over it, finishes it off. So now what exists at this point is the new ABCD structure that has been created here on the daily, and that one measures up to a whopping 2022. So get ready 2000, because this thing is going to try to get to it. That's the ABCD structure. It gets over the high, stays over the high. Nothing wrong with the way that worked. If we look at the Dow's just simply trying to get back to the highs. So there's really nothing here other than the fact that it wants to get back to it. It still has a target of 17,097 for an ABCD structure. So if it gets going here, 17,097, that doesn't look right. Why is that? That number doesn't look right. 1651. It's about 400. Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe a little bit more, but not too much more. If we look over at the week or weakest index right now, it's the NASDAQ index, right? The index 100. And that's because they've run so far. You've had ABCD structures in the SOX. We'll look at it in a minute. It's finished off on the daily, almost is finished off on the weekly. You've got big cap names like Apple that went up 25%, right? I mean, that's got to take a break. And so when you look at this guy, yeah, there's ABCD structures, but they're not as if they haven't already had a run. They have already had a run. Now they have more to go, but they're just kind of toiling up here, and I expect this to continue to be the weakest index for a while. If it can just hold here and there be rotation into other names in the group, the other indexes can keep pushing. And by the other indexes, I'm talking about the broader NASDAQ. So if we look at it, it's going after the highs. Let's put it on the weekly. It's going after the highs up here on the weekly. That top 43.71.71 got over it today. Doesn't look like it's going to quite have the volume. Matter of fact, it isn't going to have the volume. So that's going to be a test failure potentially if it doesn't stay over it tomorrow. Is that the end of the world? No. Is it a pullback? Yeah, that says that you should get a retrace off of it. That's on the weekly. If you look at the daily is pushed up. It has another ABCD structure in place. And so when we look at this one, you've got another ABCD structure here. And you've got another one inside it now, a nested one. So you've got two ABCD structures to take you higher. That's usually a pretty good situation. So I don't know that we have to worry about the NASDAQ, but yeah, can it retrace? Certainly. It can try to pull back in. And it actually did today. It came back into the swing point high. Actually had a little bit more volume today, but it was also, when you're measuring the retest regenerate zone, it's doing the zone now. When you're measuring that, what you're measuring is not only the volume on that bar, but the volume on the breakout bar itself. and that volume was yesterday's volume, and it's a little bit heavier. So that's not a bad thing. It's a little test into that zone, and it's still holding so far. So maybe a little bit more testing, but for the most part, not a bad setup. The Russell has been the one that, from my perspective, has been probably the best tell for a long time. The Russell actually stayed over that swing point high slightly. It's testing into this huge bar of resistance. This is the last big one. And if it can get over that one, there's really blue skies until the highs. At top is 1189 and a quarter. You're trading at 1184 close, got to 1186. I wouldn't be surprised if it tries to test over it tomorrow. It's not going to have the volume. The question is can it close over it? Has an ABCD structure on the way up as well. This one also measures a decent amount higher, another 2.5%, almost 3%. So we've got setups for all of these to try to continue. They've had pretty good runs already. You've got Friday, Iraq situation, so the geopolitical, and that's probably the biggest wild card out there right now on the negative side, or the potentially negative side. Oil still hasn't busted over the highs yet, so oil's not telling us that it's going to happen, right, in terms of more bad news out of Iraq. But oil is up there testing those highs. Friday, you typically see larger moves. You saw the large move in gold today. It was said that it was because of the Fed ignoring inflation. I think it was just a setup that was there. To me, the news many times follows the market. In other words, you get a move and then they come up with an excuse. And so, rather than trying to figure out why it happened, it happened. I don't really care why it happened. All I care is that the setup was there and we took advantage of it. If we miss it, we miss it. We just keep looking for the next one. But that's always the case, right? You're always looking for the setups across multiple sectors. Hopefully you've got the confluence that gives you confidence, right? The preponderance of data points that gives you confidence that something is or isn't going to happen. So oil's not telling us. The wild card in my mind is Baghdad. Getting back to the subject, Friday. It's not a long weekend, but it's a weekend. Can't trade for 2 days. We're probably going to see some volatility, and you've got quadruple witching on top of all of it, which is going to create more volatility. So tomorrow, I suspect, is going to be a very wild and woolly day in these markets. Let's look at the sectors. On the sectors actually still, they're mixed now, but they're still reasonably positive. Let's go over the ones that have finished off ABCD structures already. The first one is the SOX. The SOX is finished off one of two. On the daily, it has finished off this ABCD structure. It was in place on the daily. Let me draw that again. Bear with me here. See if we can get this right. Here we go. All right, so we had an ABCD structure actually measured from here back up, right? And that finished off. Now you've got another one, a nested one inside, that takes it a little bit higher, and that actually equals up to what you have on the weekly. So I would expect we're going to see this thing push up into this zone before it's done, and then this thing's going to take a break because it has done one heck of a move. You've gone from 77 roughly to 86, or is it 86 or more? And that's, $9. Yeah, it's 86. Is $9 on 77. I mean, that's a fairly significant move in a short period of time. So you would think this one's about done. That's about a third of your NDX, so that's going to keep the NDX from just running that much higher anytime soon. And if we look, that's the one that's done or almost done. It's done on the daily. You got the nested ones on the weekly and the other one on the daily now. XLF, actually I was going to take the ones that are finishing up ABCDs. XLE is one that just did on the daily. It's still got an ABCD structure in place on the weekly. So the ABCD structure, there was a small one here that got completed, and then you got another one up to here that just completed today, and then there's another one that's just slightly higher on the weekly. So that's another one that's done. And the XLK, this one didn't finish off an ABCD structure, but it actually went over back under with less volume. That also suggests some pressure here tomorrow on the XLK, and with seeing Oracle after hours, that would probably make sense. On the strong side, you still got IYT range trading, and actually there was one more here. The XLB did an over-under as well, so that one looks to try to come back a little bit, but it got the nice big spike up with volume, so it's not going to be much of a retrace. On the positive side though, XLF still looks quite positive, going to test those highs. XLI wants to retest the highs. The XLP just blew out the ABC, or actually blew out the high, creating another ABCD structure. Huge volume coming in here and coming in on the utilities. And it's interesting that you get the two safety sectors, all the money's rushing into those. What does that tell you? That tells you performance anxiety. I've got to be fully invested, and I want to try to be safe. I mean, what else can you derive from it? People don't want to leave the market. They know they have to be invested, and they're trying to put their money somewhere. And in this case, they're trying to put it somewhere they think is safe. XLV regenerating higher, XLY regenerating higher. Both of them going to try to go after their highs. Preponderance of evidence here, slightly higher. So when I look at the indexes, I look at the sectors, I see a market that can go higher. And if I go over the OX markets, I see the bonds telling me the same thing. Bonds had a huge reversal today on the Treasury auction. Those things came off and rates went up. It looks to me like you're fixing to break swing point lows, and this is fixing to take a little tumble. So you got a low here, you got another low there, and you got another one over here. So you got three of them lined up waiting to be broken. And if they do, and it does look like they're going to finally, we've been wondering if they would. Now it looks like they will. That's going to take it down into this bottom of this big bar at least. That's this bar. So if you're in bonds and you're long, you might want to think about it, because this doesn't look like where you want to be. Let me see, what was the other one? Oh, gold, we already talked about. Silver also up big. The dollar, let's look at the dollar. So the dollar came off today again. So the dollar coming off against the euro, and the dollar is coming off with a little volume today, coming off against the euro, not the XLE, but the FXE, whereas the euro is going back up, but the euro kind of faded at the end. Euro's still going to try to get up here and retest that swing point low. We talked about that last night. So that's kind of the way it looks. If I look at the world markets, just to make sure that we're not in a vacuum here, the first thing I want to look at is Europe. If I look at Europe, go to the CACs first. Got to push back up towards the highs. It actually tested into this high volume bar, 45.7770, got over it, back underneath it, does 1.3 into 1.48. That's going to get a little retrace before it can try to push higher again. It's still probably going to try to test those highs. The German DAX goes to test the highs, has the volume. This thing's going to test them again and more than likely get over them. If and when it does, it's going to set up another ABCD structure to the upside, and that's going to create a nice push to the top side when it does. And FTSE's just range trading. The one worry wart, if I had to pick one, is China. So if I look at the HSCE, which is the HCAP shares, the H shares on the Hong Kong exchange, they're starting to come off. Looks to me like they're come back in and test the bottom of that April 10th low. That low is 10.222.16. It looks like that's where it's going to try to go. But that's probably going to set up another push to get to that top. Still hasn't tested the top. Okay, that's the way it looks from this perspective. Let's see if we have some questions. You can email me, not only now, but anytime, and I'll take your questions. There was an email, and I'll take it first. That email is support@tatoday.com. So you might want to take a look at emailing me if you'd like to have me answer any kind of question. I'll try to do my best. You can also text me 303-912-9110. Either form, and I'll take your questions as we get to the end of the show here. Got about 8 minutes. Let's see if we can pop through these. Let me take the one that was emailed so I don't forget it. Question is BTU. Let's see what BTU looks like. So the question is with nat gas and oil hitting higher and higher highs, won't coal come back just a little? The Utes will buy what is cheaper logically, but what is logical now? I hear that, man. I don't know what's logical anymore. So please look at BTUs down near the bottom. Took a hit on politics. I know you look for strength, but to me, strength is overbought. Well, yeah, I mean, strength is overbought to some degree, but you know, it can always go higher. Let's see. If you're going to play stocks like this, right, you got to be thinking about intermediate term time frames. So the first thing I'd want to look at is what does that look like? So when I come back here to look at that, it doesn't look that bad. And this is my first time to look at the chart, so give me a second. Yeah, it doesn't look that bad at all. So let's think about what we got here. So there's two or three things. The first thing I see on a weekly, and that's, again, this is where I would be looking if I'm trying to pick something to go higher, is we had an ABCD structure, and on that ABCD structure you had a nice volume push right here on that big bar up. That's a good thing. Okay, so that tells you that there's other people thinking the same thing you are, and that is that they think this thing's going to try to run higher, pushes back down, and then it comes under, it finally hits a low, right? Test into this bar, doesn't have any volume. That's also testing into these bars over here. So that support zone holds, right? Test it the next day and gets over it, or the next week and gets over it on that next bar. That's the June 2nd bar, and has less volume. That's another good sign, right? This does look like it's setting up to try to make a move. You've also got two kind of ranges in here. They look to be about right there and about right here. That's about equidistance also, which is what I like to see. And yeah, I think it can come right back up into here on minimal, and potentially, if it gets going, can actually get back up and test the tops again. So from a weekly standpoint, it doesn't look bad. Let me see what the daily looks like now. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit more work, but yeah, I can get back up there. So yeah, I like the trade. I like the idea. I think it makes sense, and actually the chart's not bad. I mean, you had a little small ABCD structure here finished, right? Now you got another one that just finished. So I think you're going to get some more work. In other words, some more work into this area. But yeah, I think you can pick at it down here and look for a trade to the upside. Let's take a look at the next one, TBT. Oh no, the first one, JPM. Let's see what JPM looks like. JP Morgan. Okay, so now earnings is about 2 weeks away on these bank stocks, and they may get a run into that earnings. I think there's probably better ones out there than this one, but there is an ABCD structure here that finished, right? Now you got another one that's trying to set up. That would take you up into this area. I think that's about as much as you can expect. So if you get the run up, and I think there's a decent chance you will, I'd have to be thinking this as my stop area. That top is what is it, 59.40 or so. So 59.40, you're trading at 57, so that's up $2 on the upside. Where are you going to put your stop though? You almost have to give it back to this bar. So it's 54.55 on the downside. It's a 1-to-1. I think there's better trades. If I were going to trade anything in this space, I'd probably just go after the leader and trade any weakness off this guy, which is Wells Fargo. I mean, this is the strongest stock in the group. So if I'm gonna trade something, I'd probably trade this one. But I think they're all about the same. They're all, the ABCD structure here is not that much. Can they run up? Yeah, they can. Can they get up into that area for earnings? Yeah, they can. But it's almost like a one-to-one anywhere you go. Either you got to be thinking longer term, or you might want to look somewhere beside bank stocks. Next question, TBT for a trade. Yeah, I think you could off that TLT I just mentioned. I think you're going to have a shot at the downside. This thing starts to break. It's going to break fairly fast, I would expect. Let me see what the weekly is again. Yeah, I think you can get a trade back into about 109.5, and it's at, yeah, I mean, you can get $2 on it, and you're risking the top of this at most. As a matter of fact, if it starts to move down, you can risk just over this bar's bottom, which is 111.51. So you can if this starts to break, you can put the trade on and not take a lot of risk, and you're doing a leveraged vehicle with the TBT, so yeah, you can make some money. Next one, XLF, would you prefer to play banks into earnings? Honestly, I'm not in the XLF. I do have Wells Fargo myself. I don't really think, I don't see the trade. Yeah, this has a big ABCD structure, but it's probably going to take longer than earnings for this to play out. So if it breaks over it, yeah, it'll get a little juice up into here, but I think there's better trades is what I keep trying to say, right? There's probably better individual plays. There's a lot of stocks, and you guys, a lot of you, I know some of you here are members, right? You have access to my, if I pull this over, you have access to my shared list, right? You might want to just check out, remember I have the, where is it at here? There it is, second quarter earnings. Go in there and look at those. There's a bunch of stocks in there that are set up to make nice runs. And there's I keep track of everything on a daily basis that comes out of our trading signals. So, you can pop into here, or you can come into the trading signals. Either one of those, there's, you got 100 stocks in there and probably 100 in here. These, to me, are the best places to be looking. And so that's where I'd focus. Go take a look at those and find better trades. XLF's okay if you're thinking longer term. I just don't know what we're going to do after about the middle of July. So to me, the trades are the next 2 to 3 weeks, and you want to find something that's going to move and move decent in 2 to 3 weeks. And maybe that's the best way to say it. Okay, I'm out of time. Funny how that works, huh? Folks, thanks a lot. Appreciate you being there. Take care of yourself. I hope you had a great day. Have a great night. And I'll see you next time. Until then, I'm LA. This is and was your daily TA Wrap. Have a great night. Good night, folks.